Go day everyone. My name is Mermis Malayo. My topics is all about Philippine American War on Insurrection. First topic is all about the American War continued the struggle of independence of the Philippines revolutionaries against Spain. The Philippine-American War happened after the Philippines fought for independence from Spain. When the United States defended Spain in 1998, they took control of the Philippines instead of giving the country freedom. In April 1898, the United States went to war with Spain, and on May 1, the Americans destroyed the Spain fleet in Manila. Filipino leaders led by Emilio Aguinaldo already formed a government that controlled many areas in Luzon. They wanted independence not other for the ruler. Second topic is all about the Filipino revolutionary leaders exiled in Hong Kong returned to the Philippines, and General Emilio Aguinaldo established a government and gained control of much of Luzon by June 1898. In December 1898, Spain officially gave the Philippines to the United States through the Treaty of Paris. They made many Filipinos angry because they expected freedom, not other colonizer. Spain said in the Philippines to the United States in the Treaty of Paris in December 1898. And fighting broke out between Aguinaldo Forest and the U.S. troops in Manila. Because of this first broke out between Aguinaldo Filipino force and the American troops in Manila. Filipinos strongly resisted and U.S. take over because they wanted to rule themselves.
The next topic, McKinley's decision on the Philippines. When next I realized that the Philippines had dropped in our laps, I confess did not know what to do when then. I sought counsel from outside democracy as well as the Republicans, but got little help. I thought first we would take only Manila, then Luzon, then other islands, perhaps also. I walked the floor of the White House night after night until midnight, and I'm not ashamed to tell you, gentlemen, that I went down on the knees and prayed to Almighty God for lights and guidance. More than one night and one night late, it came to me this way. I don't know how it was, but it came.
What happened? After the United States won the Spanish-American War, they suddenly found themselves in control of Philippines. President William McKinley admit that he don't know how to do with the country at first.
The continuation of McKinley's decision on the Philippines. First, that we could not give them back to Spain, that would be cowardly and dishonorable.
He could give the Philippines back to Spain. He thought the world be cowardly and wrong to return the islands to the country that had mistreated the Filipinos.
Second, that we could not turn them over to the France of Germany out commercial rivals in the Orient that would be bad business and discreditable.
He could give them to other countries like France or Germany. He said that would be bad of Americans' business and make the U.S. look weak, since to the countries we American rivals in the Asia.
Third, that we could not leave them to themselves. They were unfit for self-government and they would soon have anarchy and misrule worse than Spain was and
He could leave the Filipinos on their own. McKinley believed the Filipinos were not ready to give themselves the might fall into shoes or bad leadership. Even worse, that during Spanish rule.
And the last one is number four, that there was nothing left for us to do but to take them all and to induce the Filipinos, an upleft and civilized and Christianize them, and by God's grace, to the very best we could by them as a fellow man for whom Christ also died.
He decided the U.S. should take the Philippines. He said American duty was educate, civilize, and Christianize the Filipinos. In other words, to the help them improve through these ways, really a way to justify Americans' control.
The next is excerpt of Aguinaldo's case against the United States by the Filipino. We Filipinos have all along believed that if the American nation at large knew exactly as we do what is daily happening in the Philippines Island, they would rise in mass and demand that this barbaric war should stop. There are other methods of securing sovereignty, the true and lasting sovereignty that has its foundation in the hearts of the people. And that America recognized this fact, she would cease to be the laughing stock of other civilized nations as she became when she abandoned her tradition and set up a double standard of government by the consent in America, government by force in the Philippines Island.
Filipinos believe that if ordinary Americans really know what was happening in the Philippines, they would protest and stop the Coral War. The writer said that real independence should come from the support and feelings of the people, not by force. He also citizens American for acting like a champion of freedom in their own land, but forcing the Filipino people to accept a government they did not choose. Because of this, American look hypocritical to others' country.
The next is, and then I went to bed and went to sleep and sleep suddenly. And the next morning I sent for the chief engineer of the War Department, our map marker, and I told him to put the Philippines in the map of the United States, pointing to a large map on the wall of his office. And there they are, and there they will stay with I president. President.
What happened? After thinking, prayer, and deciding that the U.S. should keep the Philippines, President McKinley finally left at peace. He said he slept well the night because he believed he had made the right choice. The next morning, when we, when he woke up, McKinley killed the chief map maker for the War Department and told them to add the Philippines to the map of the United States. This meant that he officially decided to make the Philippines a part of USA territory.
The next topic, why did the United States see the conflict as insurrection? For them, the Philippines was already a territory of the United States of America under the Treaty of Paris in 1899.
The United States believed that Philippines already belonged to them because of the Treaty of Paris in 1898, where Spain sold the Philippines to US. So, when Filipinos fought back for independence, the US did not see it as a war between two countries. Instead, they saw it as Filipino rebelling against their government and insurrection.
Semper Vigilance and Animus Filipino, personally authorized by General Emilio Aguinaldo, wrote a scathing article that was published in the North American Review in 1899.
A writer using the fake name Super Vigilance, always watchful. He personally approved by General Emilio Aguinaldo, who wrote a strong article Citizen the United States. It was published in North American Review in 1899. to show the Filipino side of the story.
The next topic is the war had two phases. The first phase was dominated by Aguinaldo's failed conventional warfare against the better trained and equipped U.S. troops lasting from February to November 1899. The second phase was marked by the Filipino shift to guerrilla warfare which lasted from November 1899 until 1902 when U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt declared the conflict over the fighting on the side of the Filipinos continued sporadic and periodic until 1913.
The first phase, February to November 1899. Emilio Aguinaldo and the Filipino Army fought the Americans in a regular or traditional way. Big battles, army versus army. But he but the US troops were stronger and better trained, so these phases ended in failure for the Filipinos. The second phases, November 1899 to 1902. The Filipinos changed their strategy and used guerrillas warfare, small surprise attack instead of big battles. They continue until 1902 when US President Theodore Roosevelt said the war was over.
Next, lay down your arms, you say. Did you lay down your arms when you too were rebels? And the English under good King George demanded your submission. How in the name of all that is serious do you demanded that we shall do what you, being rebels, refuse to do?
The writer is responding to Americans telling Filipino to lay down to your arms, stop fighting. He points out that when Americans were rebels against England long ago, they did not surrender when the English demand it. So why are they expecting Filipino to do something they themselves refuse what to do?
Our friend Admiral Dewey will undoubtedly have something to say to your president when he reaches home. He caught the genius of the Philippine people, and if he had been left alone, many valuable lives would have been spared and many millions of treasure saved.
He also mentioned Admiral Dewey, an American who understood the respected the Filipinos. The writer believed that if Dewey had been allowed to had the situation, many lives and a lot of money could have been saved because the war might not have happened.
Little over 100 years ago, it was extremely questionable when you also were rebels against the English government if you could govern yourself. Now, the moral of all this obviously is give us the chance, treat us exactly as you demanded to be treated at the hands of England. When you rebelled against her authoritative methods, now here is a unique, especially Teo Filipinos fighting for liberty, the American people fighting them to give them liberty.
The writer reminds Americans that over 10 years ago, they were also rebels fighting against England for freedom. Back then, people questioned whether Americans could rule themselves just like how the US show devotes the Filipinos. The message is give Filipino the same chance to be free that American asked for them for their own revolution. Filipinos are fighting for their freedom, while Americans claim they are fighting to give Filipino freedom, even though they are actually stopping it.
The last is this anonymous author, who may have been Apolinario Mabini, was talking to the American people regarding the unfair depiction of Filipinos and the U.S. government's instinct to take over.
This passage is all about a writer, possibly Apollinario Mabini, who spoke the American people. The writer talked about how Filipinos were being shown unfairly, in a bad or wrong way, and how the U.S. government wanted to control of the Philippines.
Good morning everyone. Today, let us talk about the results sa aking mga kabata. But before that, let us talk about historical negationism. What is historical negationism? By the way, I am KCC Pretty BS Ed 1. So let us start. First, I have here 4 key concepts about historical negationism. First one, we have revisionism. The reinterpretation of a historical account, especially in light of new facts, evidence, or interpretation. Revisionism could be legitimate, which means the work of professional historians, or illegitimate, which means negationism or mainly functions as propaganda. Revisionism is that changing how we understand history or past events based on new facts, new evidence, and new interpretation. So second one, we have negationism, the denial and distortion of the historical record, also known as illegitimate revisionism. Negationism is denying or twisting historical facts even na there is a clear evidence. And in short term, it means that it refuses to accept the truth. So, next one we have radicalization. The action or process of causing someone to adopt radical position on political or social issues, which means that becoming extreme in beliefs or actions to fight for change. And it it occurs when the peaceful thing or ganap ways seem medyo ma-fail siya or like nasa something nga mupadulong siya sa failure, ganon. So, last one, we have crony and cronyism. The appointment of friends and associates to positions of authority without regard for qualifications, giving them the power to further their interest and enrich themselves. So first, crony is close friends or ally. And cronyism is to favor their friends. So it means that bias that there is a bias moments um they they give more power sa ilahang close friends lang. So or maghatag sila position sa pag authority sa ilahang only sa ilang ally or sa ilahang friends. When historians revise history, they engage in legitimate examination, re-examination. They check if it is true or re-examine nila the historical knowledge about the past events. And this revision is done when new perspectives and evidence come to light. And however, reinterpreting the past could be fall as illegitimate, which means that usually with an insidious intent to misinform, misalign, or something like there's changes, like yes, ma-fall siya into illegitimate. And this phenomenon is still revisionism. But when history is distorted to deny historical crimes rather, we refer to it as a illegitimate historical revisionism, or we say negationism. So now, let's talk about historical negationism. Negationism. Historical negationism is an attempt to rewrite the past using unacceptable techniques such as using forgeries and presenting them as genuine, inventing clever but doubtful explanations, or reading the historical record, manipulating statistics to support the forwarded interpretation, mistranslating text, editing photographs, and various other ways. So, historical negationism, it means that how history has been distorted or simplified, and it may fall to false or misleading beliefs. Historical negationism is, the goal there is to always divert the attention, portray criminals as the actual heroes. Like what I've said, it is the inventing clever but doubtful explanations and the manipulation. Historical negationism is like something that you manipulate to change it na, for example, is criminal na siya, and then imo siyang i-ano nga dili na siya criminal. She, or whatever is the hero. So like that. Historical negationism is that you manipulate the historical facts. And in spite of tons of evidences, it will fall ragihapon into claims. Studying history and historical methodology equips us with the tools to counter the misinformation and distortion prevailing today. In this lesson, we look at 3 historical cases of illegitimate historical revisionism. But though in those 3 historical cases, we will focus on Rizal's fake poem, Sa Aking Mga Kabata. Rizal is known for his works Noli Me Tangere and El Filibustrismo, which stoked the flames of revolution. So we all grew up knowing that Rizal is very genius. He was a genius, and he also spoke several languages and was proficient in both the arts and the science. We also know that he was a genius at the very young age. Have you recall or have you like na-heard ba ninyo na he wrote a poem at the age of 8? Yes, exactly. He wrote the poem Rizal's Sa Aking Mga Kabata. And every buwan ng wika, we hear his famous words, ang hindi magmahal sa sariling wika, higit pa sa hayop at balansang isda. So, it is very like literal na we hear it every buwan ng wika. We accepted this or the results sa aking mga kabata because it was consistent with the result we knew. Siyempre, di ka na good na ni Rizal, so usa man ta mag-fact check pa kita, so di ba we accept it directly because he's known as he or something na special siya in the past events. So but Through a careful analysis of the poem, scholars have proven that Rizal could not have written it, in fact, at any point in his life. So, the scholars have proven down that Rizal could not have written it. So, in this lesson, we will tackle about the analysis of those scholars about sa Rizal's na poem. In 1991, historian Ambet Ocampo noted that the documentation of the poem is lacking and the original manuscript does not exist. Rizal has been known to be very careful in terms of documenting his life and meticulous in keeping these documents. Otherwise, dili na to mahibalan more about his life and other activities. So if Rizal wrote this poem, he must have kept it, or at least referred it as a letter to his friends or family. Because according to Ambet Ocampo, after all, writing poetry at age of 8 is by no means an easy feat. The poem's earliest appearance was in 1906 when Hermenegildo Cruz, a nationalist writer and union organizer, included it in his book Kung Sino ang Kumata ng Floranta, a biography of Francisco Balagtas. And Cruz noted that he got the poem from Gabriel Bito Francisco. Si Gabriel Bito Francisco siya ang nagkuha sa poem from a certain Saturnino Rosales of Lucban, a teacher in Magsaysay in 1884, and he was a close friend of Rizal who gave him a copy of this poem himself. Prominent Rizal biographer Austin Coates told a different story, saying that the poem was copied from hand to hand. One of the very rare copies of this poem came many years later into the hands of Antonio de Luna, to whom it owes its survival. But despite of those very problematic provenance of the poem, it reached canon status in the 20th century, and Filipinos last those centuries accepted the poem as it was consistent with Rizal's images and of defiance against Spain. So all those claims or whatever still gi-accept gihapon sa Filipinos because it is from our very own Rizal, and as what I've said, it was consistent and defiance against Spain. In 2002, Rizal's scholar Ocampo argued that Rizal could not have written the poem because it included the word kalayaan. In an 1886 letter to his brother Pasiano, Rizal shared that while he was translating a story from German to Tagalog, he lacked many words, one of which was Freiheit, or liberty. So, he wrote dito nga, the Tagalog word kaligtasan cannot be used because it means that he was formerly slave slavery, and he was in prison, etc. And I found it in the translation of Amor Patrio, the nouns Malaya and Kalayahan that Marcelo del Pilar used. In the only Tagalog book I have, Florante, I don't have an equivalent noun. And then, Ocampo asked, nag-ask si Ocampo nga, was it possible that Rizal forgot or did not use the word kalayaan in the 16 years that passed since he wrote the poem? Or was it that those who found the poem admired it so much that they believed without a doubt that only a genius like Rizal could have written it even as a child? So that. National Artist for Literature Virgilio Almario traced the use of the words laya or kalayaan to mean freedom or liberty, and found that the term was not used until Del Pilar used it in 1882. So in that case, murag na mag-question dyan nila ang katulang nga part sa poem ni Rizal. And then in 1882, Del Pilar used it, and then the National Artist for Literature found the term that was not used until the Del Pilar used it. So in that fact or claim ba na or fact, murag na-coincide siya sa kang Rizal nga part. So, Old Tagalog dictionaries such as that of San Buenaventura in 1613 list the word Maharlika for libertad or liberty and timawa for libre or free. Kalayaan only appeared in dictionary in 1889 when writing of Filipinos revolutionaries have already popularized it. So in those years, ilahang na-discover nga ang some of the words or few words, some gani, did not exist or were not used during the Rizal's youth or 1850s. Mao na to, for example, ang katong sa kalayaan. So, nangita sila og i-support nga evidence para ma-say nila nga ang katong nga word did not exist or mura nakumbaga nga ilahang giano nga kuha ra to ni Rizal. For Rizal to even write about the freedom of 8 years old is a wonder by itself and radical at best, because it was clear that in Rizal's work, he was fighting for reforms in the colonial government, and the fight for freedom from Spain will only materialize among his peers in 1892 with the Katipunan. And even Rizal himself marked his radicalization with his witnessing of injustice and cruelty through the execution of the Gomborza in 1872. These are some of the central positions that belie the claim that Rizal wrote the poem Sa Aking Mga Kabata. Now, this begs the question, what is there to gain by claiming that Rizal wrote the poem? Rizal is already a prominent Filipino hero even before the 19th, as his name became rallying cry of the revolutionaries. What could be a more probable reason was to elevate Tagalog as a national language. We all know that the Philippines in the early 19th is or having an odd mix of languages. Itong natoy time nga sagnapa ang Spain naglihok lang sa official language, then naabot tong United States, na nga nagpropagate sa use of the use of English language. So, ang poem nga attributed to Rizal might have been integral to argue for Tagalog as the national language because even the national hero or Rizal asserted its use. After all, it is just as good as Spanish, English, and the language of angels. And a committee in 1936 investigated the major languages of the country and decided that Tagalog will be the basis of a national language to be developed. And those years na we are under by our former President Manuel L. Marcos, he declared the same sa Executive Order number 134 series of 1937. And so with that, ang atwang national language is the Tagalog. Yes. Sa aking mga kabata is more than just a poem. It is a call for national consciousness. And it tells us that language is the foundation of our identity. Yes, it is. The youth play a vital role in preserving our culture. Yes, as katong sa word ni Rizal nga ang mga kabataan ay ang pag-asa ng bayan. National pride begins with loving our own, yes. To be truly free, we must never be ashamed of being Filipino because being a Filipino is like a powerful or mauna siya ato ang powerful weapon para sa kadaghanan. So, being a Filipino is not an ashamedly you think it is. So be proud and love your country, love your nationality. To be truly free, we must never be ashamed of being Filipino. So that's the end of the discussion. I hope you guys have learned about the historical negationism and results sa aking mga kabata. Good morning, and once again, I am KCC Pretty, BS Ed 1. And thank you and God bless.